Cuphead borrows from 30s animation, jazz, Koji Kondo, and more. But what if we told you that the game also borrows quite a few mechanics from some beloved video game classics? Hey guys, I'm Brendan with the Leaderboard, and today we're taking a look at Cuphead's references to two of the most influential series in gaming: Konami's brutal cheat code-toting side-scroller Contra, and Capcom's beloved fighting franchise Street Fighter. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. Gameplay mechanics. Not everyone in Cuphead's references to Street Fighter and Contra are surface level. Some of them are under the hood, hidden within the gameplay mechanics. Let's begin with something a bit more obvious: the Cuphead side-scrolling shooting and the fact that it's so frustratingly difficult. This is obviously based on games like Contra, only more brutal thanks to its lack of game nerfing Konami code. And Contra's DNA is embedded even deeper in the game's design. Cuphead's dev team has said, quote, "When we were designing Cuphead, we wanted the game to be more reaction-based than straight memorization. Great games like Contra 3 Hardcore mainly used repeating patterns and appeared in the same order every time. We feel this pattern formula tends to have less surprise on subsequent replays. On the other end of the spectrum, a game like Mega Man has a lot of proximity-based patterns to mix things up, but this can let you take advantage of the boss by forcing the AI into the same series of attacks." A less obvious mechanic from Contra Hardcore can be found at the bottom of the screen in the form of an HP box, which allows you to take 3 hits before rage quitting. This is similar to Contra Hardcore's Japanese version. The more common mechanic you'll utilize throughout the game is the parry ability, which allows Cuphead to, what else, parry enemies that are pink in color. This is directly inspired by the mechanic of the same name that first appeared in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. You can even perform multiple parries in a row, much like you're able to in Street Fighter 3. The use of mechanics from Street Fighter 3 specifically is no coincidence, as Cuphead's creators, the Moldenhauer brothers, are avid players of the third game in the Capcom franchise. If the player deals enough damage to enemies throughout the game, they'll be able to use super cards, which gives players access to some of the game's most powerful attacks. One such attack that may ring a bell for Street Fighter fans is none other than the X move. The X attacks, which have been present in the franchise since Street Fighter 3, buff the player's moves at the cost of a meter. One X move that is taken straight from Street Fighter is the iconic Hadouken move. Should you save up all 5 of your super cards, Cuphead will erupt into an attack that's known as a super art. The first of this is an attack that functions much like Street Fighter's screen-covering Shinko Hadouken, and that is one X move we do not mind seeing over and over: boss fights. First off, let's begin with the fact that several of Cuphead's boss fights are based off of the fights found in Street Fighter 2. Lead designer Jared Moldenhauer even stated that just about everything found in these fights were themed after Street Fighter 2 specifically, with some SNK added in for good measure. The spectator crowds in the background of the fights were directly inspired by the spectators found in Street Fighter 2's arenas. Beyond the atmosphere, just about every attack performed by the bosses can be traced back to a Street Fighter move. Let's take a look at the fight against Ribby and Croaks. The most obvious move that everybody tends to point out is the Fireball attack, which resembles the same move performed by Ryu and Ken. Let's also point out that in addition to possessing both Ryu and Ken's iconic moves, Ribby and Croaks also resemble the characters themselves in both looks and animation. Ribby wears white pants, red boxing gloves, and a belt, the perfect Ryu cosplay. Croaks' red pants, brown boxing gloves, and belt resemble Ken's look. When the match first starts, the duo borrows the taunts of Ryu and Ken found in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Ribby's taunt is also similar to Akuma's from Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Now let's get a little more obscure with the moveset. Rapid Hands is almost identical to a rapid attack performed by E. Honda. The Firefly projectiles are similar to the fireball spitting attack performed by Dalsim, and the wheel-like roll attack is ripped straight from a move that Blanka does. There are also some moves that more subtly reference Street Fighter attacks as opposed to bluntly resembling them. For example, the boss's fan attack was inspired by Zangief's V-trigger, only it has the opposite effect. Whereas Zangief's move pulls enemies in, the move found in Cuphead tends to blow them away. You know, like a fan would. The charging animation that occurs with Ribby before firing the bouncing, flashing projectile is identical to the Street Fighter 2 animation that leads up to Guile's Sonic Boom attack. During the Ribby and Croaks boss fight, they merge together to create the deadliest slot machine in existence, somehow. This portion of the fight was created to reference the bosses of Street Fighter 2. The machine's icons take the form of 3 different animals, one of which is a tiger, in a reference to Street Fighter's boss Zagat's signature move, the Tiger Uppercut. There is also a possibility that the bison icons can line up, a reference to one of the most famous and meme-worthy Street Fighter opponents, m.bison. Last but not least is the snake icon, which is a subtle reference to m.bison's personal bodyguard, Vega, who bears a badass tattoo of a giant snake on his body. The moves that accompany these unwanted jackpots are also references to the moves of these characters. The bison unleashes chips that exert beams of energy, similar to m.bison's psycho energy. Landing all tigers causes the chips to bounce upward, almost as if they intend to uppercut the player. The final iteration of the snake chips saw the intended reference lost in translation, but according to the designers, they intended to have the chips roll in a manner identical to Vega's rolling attack. The developers still hadn't quite had their fill of Street Fighter references with just one boss fight. There's a significant, more obscure reference in the fight against Sally's stage play. During her intro, she can be seen ripping off her wedding dress in a manner similar to Urian's intro, in which he tears off his suit. Much like Ribby and Croaks, her attacks are also based on the methods found in the Street Fighter series. When she jumps and tosses her fan, she's mirroring Ibuki's attack, where she jumps and tosses her kunais. Sally also has the ability to transport around the stage, much like Dalsim does. In addition, the dive kick that Sally performs is a recreation of an attack performed by Necro. And speaking of Necro, he's referenced in yet another boss fight. Just like the other bosses seem to nab taunts from Street Fighters, a variation of Necro's taunt can be seen at the start of the Cagni Carnation boss battle. When the Moldenhauer brothers ran out of bosses to copy and paste for their game, they dusted off their old copy of Contra Hardcore for inspiration. The constellations that occur during the second stage of Hildeberg's boss fight are identical to the constellation attacks that occur in the Neumann Cascade Virtual Simulator boss fight. Taurus, Gemini, and Sagittarius make an appearance. And a bonus factoid for all you Capcom fans out there, the mechanical crescent moon that Hilda turns into is reminiscent of an early boss in Capcom's Chariot shooter, which was included as part of their Three Wonders arcade game. Last but certainly not least, during the final fight against the devil himself, Cuphead is given an offer to either join the devil and be rewarded with a bad ending, or do what most sane and rational players would do and engage in a climactic fight to the death. This Darth Vader-esque scenario was seen during the final boss of Contra Hardcore. Dialogue. Cuphead borrows a few lines of dialogue from the Street Fighter series, starting with the game's tutorial. If you manage to kill yourself by accessing an unused weapon in the game's debug mode, you'll be treated to a death screen that reads, "You are not a warrior, you are a beginner." This is a quote that serves as the victory phrase of Sagat in Street Fighter 2. Additionally, the quote found in the death screen during the final phase of the devil boss fight is a nod to m.bison's victory screen from the console version of Street Fighter 2. Backtracking to the Ribby and Croaks fight one more time, their death quote that can occur within the final phase of the fight is a quote that was once spoken by a battle announcer found in Street Fighter Alpha. And that quote is, "You went for broke and now you're croaked." It's almost as if Capcom knew that they were going to be parodied by frogs in a video game released 22 years later. And there you have it. Once again, I'm Brendan, and thanks for watching Contra and Street Fighter references in Cuphead. Which one is your favorite? Did we miss any? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click that bell icon to become part of the notification squad, and if you like getting more from your game, subscribe to the Leaderboard, your home for video game fact.